friends, welcome back to our channel. My name is Kathryn Hubert. I am the owner of Chez Genèse, which is a small French-inspired cafe in Greensboro, North Carolina. We hope to change the way that our world both views and employs adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we've had this channel for a little over a year now, but are really placing more emphasis on it this year as we've gotten more comfortable verbalizing who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and this is a space for us to share all of that with you as our community, whether you are inside of Greensboro or outside. And our hope is that this is a space for education, a platform for advocacy, and a chance to just share our heart and story with you. So thank you for being here today. As we've entered into this new year, we've been going back and we've covered why we're a business and not a nonprofit. We have talked about equality versus exceptionalism, and then how to be just the right amount of offensive as we do that work of education and advocacy. And as I've been thinking forward into the next several weeks, we are going to be talking more about disability language and awareness and words to use and to not use, etc. But before we dive into all of that, I really wanted to take a minute and share a little bit about my heart and story, because I think those two things do pretty significantly inform what our business is and how it operates. And I usually share my story in terms of logistics and how those logistics have been building blocks in the creation of this restaurant. So, some of those logistics include I love food, and I went to culinary school, and I've worked in restaurants since I was 17 years old, and I lived in France for a year, and I have 3 cousins with autism, and there are all these different facets of my life that have been tied together in the concept of Chez Genèse. However, those things are things that I have done or that have been part of my circumstances, and some of them speak to who I am as a person, but I think there's more to who I am than just the things that I have done. And I think that every part of who I am has been poured into and invested into Chez Genèse, and I've recognized that more and more as the years have gone on, and I think that there's value in me sharing some of my own personal story, my own heart, so that there's a deeper connection and understanding of truly why we do the things that we do around here. So this video may be a little bit messy. It may be a little bit different than what we normally do. It's a little bit different than what I normally do here, and I can tell that there's a lot of emotion in my body as I reflected on that and as I start to talk about it. So you may see that appear in the video today too, and that is okay. So as we venture in, I'm not going to give you my full life story because I don't think that is necessary, and that would be more time than we need to occupy in this video today. But some chief elements of who I am and why I'm passionate about the things that I do, and the things that have shaped me, that I want to share with you are, number one, I'm a really sensitive person. And it's taken me a lot of time over my life to grow to love that about myself. I feel things really deeply. I'm very aware of the feelings that are existing around me. And I care a lot about the feelings that other people hold. I'm a very strong person, and I have a lot of belief in myself and in my own strength, and I know, like, if I set my mind to something, if I decide to do something, like, I know that I will do it. Like, I very rarely experience self-doubt in that regard. I experience doubt in other ways, but, like, I very rarely doubt my own ability to decide and then to follow through on something. I know that I'm strong, but it's taken me a long time to figure out this relationship between strength and sensitivity, and understanding that while I am strong, I'm also very tender. And I think those two things not only complement each other, but actually inform one another. I think that my tenderness and my sensitivity is part of what lends itself to my strength. But I like deeply care, and that shows up in my work. When I look out in the restaurant and I see people and how they're experiencing this space, how they're experiencing my food, how they're experiencing the team, like, I am aware of the feelings that other people are feeling, and I care very much about that, and making sure that people feel welcomed and loved and accepted. And I want Chez Genèse to be a place of belonging. And I so desperately want it to be a place of belonging, because for a lot of my life, I haven't felt like I fit in places, and have mostly always felt like an outsider. And sometimes that's not always been a negative thing. There are times, I think, when I've felt like an outsider because I've really wanted to pursue an achievement, or I've wanted to pursue excellence, and that's made me stand out. That's not necessarily like I'm standing out for a bad reason, but I still don't feel like I fit in. And a lot of that drive for achievement and excellence in me came from feeling, I think, pretty ignored, especially by other peers, and like I didn't, I think oftentimes feeling pretty left out or unwanted in other friend groups. So the way that I pushed against that was by, if you don't want to invite me over, I'll invite you over. And hospitality and hosting became something that I was really passionate about, because it gave me a place to create a space for other people to fit in, because I didn't necessarily experience that myself. And so I see that reflected in this restaurant. And when I see people, whether it's my staff or whether it's our guests, come in and feel like they belong and feel like they're accepted, that tends to those wounds in my own heart and spirit of times in my life where I haven't felt that way. And kind of these full circle moments of, like, even if that wasn't something that I always felt, I knew what that feeling was, and I knew that I wanted it, and it set me on this path and mission to provide that in my life for other people. And the beauty in that is that as I've pursued that with this restaurant, and I pursued that with my team has created a place for me to belong to, and for me to be myself, and where they love and they accept me on my good days and on my hard days, and on the days when I'm ugly, and on the days when I'm at my, like, stride, and everywhere in between. And they laugh and they shake their head when I make silly jokes, and they're patient with me when I get frustrated or lose my temper. And so that's been this beautiful, I think, rewriting and restructuring of some of my own stories and narratives that I have spoken over myself. but that deeply informs the heart that I have for this restaurant. And then the two other things to add to that are, and my parents can attest to this, I've always had a very strong sense of fairness, and I also am very stubborn and can be very, have a drive for independence. And those are also things that I've come to love about myself more and more the older that I've gotten. But from a very early age, my parents worked to teach me that life is not fair, because that was the thing that the catchphrase that I used maybe the most was, "That's not fair." That's not fair. That's not fair. And I think that can be humorous in a young child who's being adamant about something that's not fair. But then I look at the work that I'm doing now and how passionate I am about the injustice that is in this world, and specifically the injustice around people with disabilities, the employment of disabled humans, how our systems and structures in this world and in this country are set up for disabled humans. And I burn up on the inside over that. And I love that part of myself. When I get truly angry about the injustice, I'm learning to like that. That kind of anger pushes us into action. It's not a damaging anger. It's not a passive anger. It's a very active, this is not right. This needs to change. I cannot stay silent. We are moving forward kind of anger. And there's so much energy and momentum that can be behind anger. And so this strong sense of justice and fairness I see exercised greatly within the fabric of who we are. And then the last thing, which is a very tender and sensitive thing for me, and I don't talk about really much at all, some of it because I don't think about it all of the time, but also because it can sometimes, I think, feel labeling or embarrassing to myself, and that's a double standard given the line of work that I do, which is that I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder when I was 16 years old, and that came out of a season of extreme and paralyzing anxiety and fear, to the point where I was really unable to do anything independently. The fear became all-consuming, and predominantly revolved around, I'm not going to get too deep into this because this is not a therapy session, and this is also not I'm not trying to educate y'all on OCD necessarily, but there are different forms of OCD, and the form that I have dealt with over the years is called a pure obsession, which means that I lean more towards really just the obsessive and the fixation piece of something, and not so strongly on the compulsion side. And that's been around the area of intrusive thoughts, and a lot of those center around ideas of harm. So there was a significant season in my life where not only was I really able to do much for myself or for other people, but there was a lot of fear around anything that could potentially be harmful. And I feel like that's important to say, because of when I look back on that season of my life and I look at where I am now and the people who helped get me here. Like, I couldn't walk past a kitchen because I knew that there were knives in it, and that completely terrified me. I couldn't be left alone. I couldn't be responsible for other people. Not because I wasn't a responsible person or that anything that I was going to actually act on any of the fears that were consuming my mind, but because I was so afraid that I was going to. And there was a lot of intensive therapy. There was a lot of work within my family environment, and some friends that were close. And I remember at that time expressing that I was really afraid I was never going to get to pursue the things that I loved and that I wanted to pursue in my life. And I think about that sometimes, running a business as a chef, where I'm in a kitchen and my knife skills are really good now and just like part of my life and who I am, and just the transformation in that process. And it is deeply informative to who I am, I think, in the heart that I have for coaching and for empowering other people and for calling them to their potential and for believing in them and for seeing their capacity, and for coming alongside and supporting people and lifting them up. And that comes from this season where I was in a place where I couldn't do anything for myself, and there were people who came and surrounded me. And actually believed that there was a different story for me. And walking through that and realizing that there was, and that I've been able to live it out. And I'm so grateful. And so if I can do that for any other person in the world, if that's for a long season of time, if that's for a short season of time, whatever it may be, if someone can walk through this door and feel like they were accepted, that they belong, that there's a space for their entire personhood, that they're celebrated, and that I believe in them, and that I'm going to push and to encourage and to grow and empower people to be the fullest versions of themselves possible. I want to do that, and I want to see people pursue their dreams, and I want to give skill sets where I can. So that speaks more to like the coaching element of what we do and rewriting. We talk a lot about changing the way that our world views and employs people with disabilities, and I think when we speak that, it oftentimes comes out in an expression of changing the way that non-disabled humans think about or employ disabled humans. But there's another layer to that, an element, which is a lot of our employees with disabilities have been told untrue and unkind and unfair things over the course of their lives, and we want to provide a different narrative here and to speak truth and worth over their lives, and to speak that we see their intelligence. I see your capability. I see your amazing personality. I see your potential. I see that you have dreams. I see that you're afraid right now. All of that, like seeing the person and reminding that person of who they are and giving that person space to be themselves. So this is our longest video yet. This was not meant to be a Kathryn Fest, but simply an opportunity for me to share in spoken format what's inside my heart and what's inside my soul. know that all of that is poured into this little restaurant that I love with every single part of me.